Hey everybody, welcome back to another reading about the presidents. We are on to Mr. Dwight David Eisenhower. Born October 14, 1890 in Denison, Texas. He died on March 28, 1969 in Washington, D.C. He was known as Ike. He was a Presbyterian. He attended the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, graduated in 1915. He was a soldier. His father's name was David Jacob, or D.J. Eisenhower. His mother was Ida Elizabeth Stover Eisenhower. His wife, Dwight's wife, was Marie or Mammy Geneva Dowd Eisenhower. Passed away in 1979. Died 10 years after Dwight. Children: Dowd Dwight Eisenhower. Lived only 4 years. John Sheldon Dowd, who supposedly is still alive. He was commissioned second lieutenant in 1915, promoted to first lieutenant in 1916, and captain in 1917. Remained in the U.S. during World War I. After World War I, promoted to major in 1920, became lieutenant colonel 1936, and then colonel in 1941. For World War II, he was promoted to major general and then made commander of all U.S. forces in Europe with promotion to lieutenant general. In February 1953, promoted to general. In December 1943, Franklin Roosevelt selected Eisenhower as the supreme Allied commander to plan the invasion of Europe, Operation Overlord. After success on D-Day, he won promotion to 5-star general in December 1944. He accepted Germany's surrender in 1945 and then resigned from the army in February 1948. So he was in it from 1915. That's 33 years in the army. Political life: Supreme Commander of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. He served 2 terms from January 20, 1953 to January 20, 1961. He was a Republican. He finished his term. His vice president was Richard M. Nixon. In the election in 1952, Mr. Eisenhower got 442 electoral votes. Adlai Stevenson, 89. In the popular votes in 1952, Mr. Eisenhower got 33,778,963 popular votes. Stevenson got 27,314,992 popular votes. In the election in 1956, Eisenhower got 457 electoral votes. Stevenson only got 73. Ouch. In the popular vote, Mr. Eisenhower got 35,581,003. Stevenson got 25,738,765. So, at 10,000, 9,000, 10,000, or 10 million, 10 million vote difference. All right, cabinets for Mr. Eisenhower includes John Foster Dulles, and then followed by Christian Herter, Herter, Herter. Puts this thing down. Secretary of the Treasury, George Humphrey, followed by Robert Anderson. Secretary of Defense, Charles E. Wilson, followed by Neil McElroy, followed by Thomas Gates, Thomas S. Gates Jr. Attorney General was Herbert Brownell Jr., followed by William P. Rogers. Postmaster General was Arthur E. Summerfield. Secretary of the Interior was Douglas McKay, followed by Frederick Seaton. Secretary of Agriculture Ezra Taft Benson, probably related to William Howard Taft. Secretary of Commerce Sinclair Weeks, Weeks, followed by Frederick Mueller. Secretary of Labor, Martin P. Durkin, followed by James P. Mitchell. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. Interesting. Oveta Culp Hobby, first to serve in this new post. Marion Folsom, and then Arthur S. Fleming. Interesting name. I think that's just the Department of Education now. I think it is. The Salk vaccine for polio, 1955. For 8 years, Dr. Jonas Salk toiled to create a vaccine against polio, and he finally succeeded in 1955. American children were inoculated, and within the generation, the disease had been eradicated from the United States. Supreme Court appointments. Earl Warren, you know him. He was Chief Justice. John Marshall Harlan, William J. Brennan, and Charles Whitaker, and Potter Stewart. U.S. population in 1953, 151,925,798. National debt in 1961, 296,168,761,215. The president's salary was $100,000 a year plus 50,000 non-taxable expense accounts. 2 states were added to the Union: Alaska, January 3rd, 1959, and Hawaii, August 21st, 1960. Now we have our 50 states. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created in 1949 with its headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, and its mission to protect the security of its member nations, primarily Western Europe, Iceland, the U.S., and Canada. An attack upon any one of its members would be considered an act upon all. 1952, Greece and Turkey joined. 1954, NATO rejected the Soviet Union's overture to also join. The following year, the West Germany became a NATO member. Did we know Eisenhower is the only president to win an Emmy Award given in recognition of his use of television? That's new. 1950s fads. Young people in the 50s enjoyed a variety of new games and activities, including the hula hoop, frisbee, spud guns, and going to drive-ins where car hops roller skated about with their orders. Girls wore poodle skirts and saddle shoes, while guys wore leather sweaters, or the ones imitating James Dean, cruised around in their roll-up jeans, leather jackets, and hair greased back in a DA. Coonskin hats from the hit television show Davy Crockett were all the rage, and television became common in American households. Did we know Eisenhower was the first president of the 50 United States? We just read that. Did we know a putting green was installed on the White House lawn for President Eisenhower? Warsaw Pact, 1955. The organization of the USSR and its satellite states were created in response to the addition of West Germany to NATO. A primary difference between the two organizations was that all NATO members were members because each chose to be. The Warsaw Pact nations enjoyed no such autonomy. The presidents of both of these organizations emphasized the line drawn by the Cold War, the line between democracy and communism. Bomb shelters, promoted by the Federal Civil Defense Administration as a means to supplement fallout shelters for the population in case of nuclear attack. Some Americans built bomb shelters in their homes or nearby. The government suggested guidelines for the bomb shelter's construction, including one wall of an 18-inch concrete with a second wall to act as protection against radiation, and also recommended keeping at least 2 weeks of food staples on hand at all times. At school, children would practice duck and cover drills. Signs for fallout shelters were visible, so people knew where to go if notified of an impending attack. And these too were to be kept stocked at all times. Eisenhower is the only president to have served in the military during both world wars. Wow. Did we know President Eisenhower supported adding the phrase "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance? Finally, President Eisenhower's picture was on the dollar coin from 1971 to 1978. And that's all of Dwight David Eisenhower. Hope you enjoyed.